Welcome to today's webinar, Eat Well, Live Well. I'm your presenter today, and I'll also be handling the questions as our facilitator is unfortunately not well. So we like to start all of our programs with an acknowledgement, and we acknowledge and pay respect to the traditional custodians, past and present, on whose lands we meet today. We acknowledge the deep feelings of attachment, the relationship of Aboriginal people to country, and we respect the cultural authority of the elders in each community. So I'm having to introduce myself today. So I'm a health educator. I've been working in that space for over 20 years. I've got a degree in engineering and in health science and a postgrad in adult learning. I was international training manager for Nokia, director and founder of a corporate health organisation called Health at Work. And I worked at and continue to work at Monash University, delivering the mindfulness and the health enhancement programme to the medical students there. I've been working at MS for 4 years, and in 2015 I collaborated with Andrea Salmon and produced the Eat Well, Live Well project, which this work is based on. So making lifestyle changes is a really empowering part of the treatment and management of MS, and it is a part of the team. So that obviously includes the medical management and your professional team, etc. We have a health and well-being model that we like to talk about, which is called Essentials, and nutrition is in the Essentials model, along with connections and exercise and stress management, etc. So I'm going to pop my webcam off now so that we can save a bit of broadband, and I'll pop it on again a little bit later. Okay, so for those people who've only just joined, please do type in any questions or comments and I'll periodically stop and have a read of those questions. Okay, so that would be terrific. Okay. So we know that about 40% of people, when they're diagnosed with MS, will actually make changes to their diet. So what I'd really love you to do right now is in the question box, type in if you've made any changes to your diet and what it is. So you might just pop in eating more salmon or reducing sugar. So keep it nice and brief. But I'd love to hear from you about what changes you might have made, if any. Okay, so please get typing in that question box and I'll have a look at it. Now we know that for many people with MS, making a positive change to your diet is a really important way of regaining some control, improving your quality of life when you're living with what's an unpredictable and a chronic health condition. It can be empowering. The side effects are positive, and you tend to have more energy. Things like your blood markers, your cholesterols and glucose markers, triglycerides, etc., can all improve, can help you to better manage your symptoms such as constipation and fatigue and weight fluctuations. But it's really important to note that before you make any significant changes to your diet, please speak to your GP or your dietitian just to make sure you're getting exactly what you need specific to your requirements. We're all different, and you might need specific advice for your situation. Now let's have a look in the question panel now and just see what people have said. So Ernestina's newly diagnosed and started the OMS diet, which is really interesting. I hope you'll get some good info here as well, Ernestina. Anne has reduced the volume of her food. Ian's reduced gluten. Helen's having more veg. Gina's, yes, less meat, less dairy, and cooking rather than processed food. Sue's eating salmon twice a week, no sugar in her coffee. Bridie's less meat, more omega-rich foods, less saturated fats, but still using coconut, and we'll talk a bit about that. Joanne's no sugar, no processed foods, lots of water, fresh produce, smaller meals. Jane's less processed, more whole foods. Lots of veggies. Nikki's lots of veggies and fruit and reduced her saturated fat. And Stella's vitamin D. Yeah, beautiful. So thanks, guys. All of those make sense. And hopefully as we go through the program today, you will understand perhaps a little bit more about why you're making those changes and maybe renew your commitment to making some of those changes or get interested in some of the changes other people have made, and find out what resonates for you and what makes sense for you. And Andrew's reduced fat intake, lots of fibre and veg. Fantastic. All sounds great. Let's get into the content and keep typing in and keep asking your questions. That would be great. Wonderful. And Stella's saying she gradually went off painkillers. I'm assuming maybe her diet helped with that. Okay, thanks, Stella. And again, it's really personal, and changing any medications has to be done in conjunction with your GP or with your neurologist. Okay, so when we look at what sort of changes do people make, very much in line with the sort of changes that you all typed in. So top of the list, increasing your fruit and vegetables, fantastic. And then things like reducing the saturated fat, more fluids, low dairy, and we'll talk about where there's evidence and where there isn't in these different choices that people make. And a note about evidence there. There's very little good quality dietary evidence. Most of the studies are observational studies. So we've observed when people are eating these types of diets with these types of foods, this is what's happening, and this is what we've extrapolated from that. As opposed to an intervention where we give people a certain amount of salmon per week or omega-3 per week, and we watch over time what happens and we measure. So diet is traditionally pretty difficult. There's some great studies being conducted at the moment, many of them supported by MSRA, and we've got a wonderful podcast with a bit of an update on evidence-based and current studies in progress in the nutrition space that Dr. Lucinda Black presented for us. So I encourage you to have a look at that podcast as well. So we really need to think about food being our medicine, which is something that Hippocrates stated way back in BC. So it's a new way of thinking for a lot of Western way of eating. It's a way of thinking that particularly Chinese dietetics and Ayurvedic dietetics have had in place for centuries. I love this cartoon of a man looking really glum, wheat-free, dairy-free, fat-free, nut-free, sugar-free and salt-free. He looks utterly miserable. And of course, it doesn't have to be like that. We can have fantastic food and really enjoy our diet and eat a range of really delicious food. So study here by Fitzgerald strongly associated diet quality with disability and symptom severity in MS. This study looked at the levels of fats in the blood, such as triglycerides and cholesterols, and found that there was an association, and we can only call it an association, with increased disability and unhealthy lipid profiles. So managing cholesterol and managing your triglycerides might help with symptom severity and disability progression. So we're going to talk about fats, and we're going to get clear about the different fats. Okay. Another one here, lipid-related genetic polymorphisms significantly modulate the association between lipids and disability progression in MS. So quite a mouthful there. But the upshot of this study was that omega-3s have an anti-inflammatory effect, and it's considered beneficial for your general health. And we'll talk more about that. So that was a particularly interesting study that was published in 2019. So I really want us to have a great baseline to start with, so we're all on the same page. So if I say healthy diet, we know what exactly we mean by a healthy diet. Okay, so a healthy plate might look like this: wonderful source of protein rich in omega-3s, such as salmon, and then a rainbow, half a plate full of veggies, or in this case salad, but lots of different colours. Different colours provide different nutrients, so we want that rainbow colour on our plate. So if we think of diet, and we're just creating our baseline here, if we think of a healthy diet in terms of traffic lights, green light, enjoy as much as you want of fruit and vegetables, whole grain cereals and omega-3s. So we love omega-3s because they have an anti-inflammatory effect, and this is generally considered very beneficial for your general health. So although research is limited on omega-3s, it may be a really healthy addition to any MS diet. They're found in salmon and sardines and mackerel and flaxseed oil and walnuts. And currently, based on the studies we've got available to date, I strongly recommend flaxseed oil and including flaxseed oil in your diet. Okay, so general guideline from the Mayo Clinic is around 10 to 20 ml per day. And how I get flaxseed oil in my diet is putting it on my cereal, using it as a salad dressing. It shouldn't be heated. It shouldn't be in sunlight. It's a delicate oil, needs to be kept cool, needs to be cold pressed. And I would strongly encourage you to get that in your diet. If we think about an amber light, so that's to enjoy in moderation, that's lean unprocessed meat. Okay, and the key word here is unprocessed. So the studies have shown that eating meat moderately of good quality source, so grass-fed, which means it's got good omega-3s, is quite acceptable in our diet if you choose to be a meat eater. What doesn't work well for anybody, and particularly people with MS, is the processed meat. That's your salamis and your sausages and your burgers and things like that. Okay, that's where we've identified the problem with meat and MS. So some nuts and seeds, particularly walnuts that look like little brains and are really good for your brain and are full of omega-3s. If you're having dairy in your diet, that may be a good quality natural yogurt would be advised. And then if we look at our red light areas, things that we want to avoid would be saturated fats. So that's generally from an animal source. So cream, butter, milk, cheese, processed meats, salami, sausages, burgers, biscuits, cakes, pastries. So they've got the trans fats in them, fried foods, sugary drinks, cordial, energy drinks, and salt. So we really want to limit saturated fat. And we'll talk about dairy a little bit later, and sugary drinks. So we really want to cut down our sugar as best we can. And I know that's hard. I've got a really sweet tooth, so believe me, I really do know that's hard. And salt. Salt has been linked with poorer outcomes with MS, and salt creeps in like sugar in so much of our diet. So we need to try to reduce our salt intake. So as I mentioned, we really want to limit processed meat. I would say get it out of your diet completely. I know it's tasty, but it's not good for you. So if you can, let's get rid of our processed meat. Let's talk about fats now, because it's so important in our current thinking about diet and MS. And again, I'm just going to check the questions that have come up. Oh, Alison, you've asked me a really difficult question. Are pecans the same as walnuts? And I think we might get quite a bit of input from some other people here. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I don't think they are. Stella has said iodized salt, ? And iodine is important for healthy thyroid function. So it is important that we have iodine in our diet, and our soils can be quite low in it in Australia. So some iodized salt might be great, but only if you're not eating salt in other sources, in lots of processed foods, Stella. Okay, so let's get a roll on now about fat and the facts about fat. So fats or lipids are split up into different categories. Saturated fats are the ones that we want to limit. They're generally from animals. Saturated means that the fat molecule contains the maximum amount of hydrogen, so the molecule is saturated with hydrogen. It's just a bit of theory about the name, okay? What you need to remember is limit your saturated fat is general health nutrition information to date, and it's generally solid or hard at room temperature, so it includes things like meat, cheese, milk, yogurt, cream, coconut milk, and palm oil. Now, coconut milk has a lot of saturated fats in it, but it also has some great vitamins and minerals, and it has some anti-cancer properties. So I have some coconut milk in my diet. I enjoy a good green curry every now and again, but I limit the saturated fats in lots of other areas. So that's my treat. I allow myself that. So again, it's a very personal choice. Unsaturated fats. Now, I think this is a walnut, not a pecan, but you can put me right there. We're really interested in omega-3s, not just for people who've got MS, but actually for the general population. It's considered really healthy to increase our omega-3s, but particularly for people with MS. So it's associated with, not proven, but associated with an improved quality of life, lower cholesterol, reduced disease activity. It helps to modulate immunity. And when you've got an autoimmune disease, then that's pretty interesting. And it lowers inflammation. And when you've got a health condition that's inflammatory, that's pretty interesting. So they're called an unsaturated fat because the molecules contain less than the maximum amount of hydrogen. So the molecules are not saturated with hydrogen, they're unsaturated. These are essential in your body can't make them, so you have to eat them. And the sources are, as I've mentioned, and I will keep referring to omega-3s, walnuts, flaxseed, fish oil, salmon, mackerel, etc. And I particularly like flaxseed oil. And these are some flax seeds, which if you eat them like this, they just go straight through your body. So you need to grind them up like in a coffee grinder. And then you've got some flaxseed and ground flaxseed, which provides some beautiful nutrients and some phytoestrogens, etc., and some great fiber. And then the oil you'd need to buy. And I would encourage you to look at having some of that oil. And salmon, as I mentioned, great source of omega-3. Now, omega-6 we want in moderation. Now, I put this delicious picture of an avocado up here because I'm interested in avocados because they've got oleic acid in them, which is the main fat in the myelin sheath. And the myelin sheath is the coating around your nerves that gets degraded and broken down during multiple sclerosis. So I think it's important that we have sufficient oleic acid in our body so that if there's going to be some myelin repair, that has got all the building blocks that it needs to happen. And eggs are also a good source of omega-6, so again, in moderation, but they're a fantastic source of protein. They're the most bioavailable source of protein for our body. And they've also got acetylcholine in them, which is a neurotransmitter required for good muscle and brain function. So for those people who tolerate eggs well, in moderation, you might have them in your diet. And then Jane, I'm just referring now to a couple of questions because we've covered off the main points about fats. So I'm just checking in. Jane said, are almonds bad guys or good guys in the nut world? Well, I like almonds. I'd call them good guys. They're a great source of calcium and magnesium and manganese and a good source of unsaturated fats, Jane. So we generally talk about nuts about having no more than a small handful a day and having them raw so they haven't been heated or roasted because that upsets the fat. But I would definitely include almonds in my diet. Do I have any recipes that use flaxseed oil? Sue, if you go to our website, there's quite a few recipes, but remember with flaxseed oil, we are not cooking it. So we're using it in our salad dressings, we might pour it on our veggies, we might put it in a smoothie, we might incorporate it in our cereal in the morning, but we're not heating it. And Bridie's asking, is iFillet steak processed? No, it's not. iFillet steak is natural. And if you can get a good quality one that's grass-fed, Bridie, then that would be considered healthy and a great source of protein and iron. So as I mentioned, you do need to look after your omega-3 unsaturated fats. They need to be cold pressed, kept in the fridge, no heat, no sunlight, and airtight. And you can smell if they've gone rancid, and you can taste. So you want nice, fresh omega-3 flaxseed oils. Let's talk about anti-inflammatory foods, because a Mediterranean diet would be a beautiful anti-inflammatory diet with, lots of fish and fresh salad in it and healthy meats. And some other great anti-inflammatory foods that you can include will be citrus, particularly the peel of citrus, lots of flavones in that, which also have anti-cancer properties, which is wonderful. This is a close-up of broccoli. It's a cruciferous vegetable, which means cross, and you can see that all the little florets have got crosses on them. And we love broccoli. It's got a very powerful antioxidant in it that when you chew it up, it mixes with our saliva and it makes sulforaphane, which is a really powerful antioxidant. So really strongly suggest lightly cooked or raw broccoli, including that in your diet. Garlic, we all know, is a fantastic antibiotic properties and antiviral. It's a powerful antioxidant and anti-inflammatory as well. And then we love pomegranate, and there's a compound in pomegranate called punosalogen, which helps to stop or to slow inflammation of the brain. And this was discovered by researchers at the University of Huddersfield. So people get frustrated with pomegranate using like a needle or something to get those little seeds out. I just cut it up and I just rip the seeds out with my hands, and I find that that's really efficient. It's not very elegant, and I wouldn't recommend that you do it at a restaurant, but in the privacy of your own home, you can do things like that. Anti-inflammatory food would obviously include the omega-3s, such as salmon. And then turmeric is beautifully anti-inflammatory with the curcumin in it. So you can make dal, you can make a golden latte, you can sprinkle it on veggies or on scrambled egg, and I think it's really lovely on roasted cauliflower. And then we also have these immune modulating SCFAs, short chain fatty acids. Okay, and you can get them from the food sources down at the bottom of this slide, such as artichokes and leeks and garlic and onions and bananas and asparagus and apples and carrots, etc. But they act as a source of energy for your cells in your colon, and that helps to produce regulatory T cells, which may be anti-inflammatory. So again, these short chain fatty acids have an anti-inflammatory action. So you can see having a great range of vegetables in your diet and lots of different colored vegetables helps you to get across some anti-inflammatory actions, producing some great regulatory T cells, which help to modulate your immunity. They have anti-cancer properties as well. So, it can be really beneficial for you. Now, people in the pod that I work in at work all thought that the idea of a golden latte was disgusting, but here's some people from the MS Connect team enjoying a golden latte that I made from that. So that was a turmeric latte. Now, many people ask about all the different MS diets, and we have some people online today who are doing the OMS diet, the Overcoming MS. And what I want to look at here is some of the main diets. I'm not going to go into detail with them, so that's certainly not my place to do that. But what I want to look at is what they're all recommending and what they're all not recommending, okay? Because then we can see some similarities. And this is taken from Dr. Lucinda Black's research and some of her work from Curtin University. And they're doing some great work there, in part supported by MSRA. So we're briefly looking at SWANK, OMS, McDougall, Walls, and the Australian Dietary Guidelines. They all say have plenty of good quality vegetables, have plenty of fruit. Most of them, except for Walls, are saying enjoy whole grains. So cut out the white bread and get some decent whole grain, good quality breads and cereals in. Most of them, except for Walls, say enjoy your legumes, your lentils. Most of them say enjoy really good quality fish. Jury's out on meat and poultry. Lots of them are not including eggs or the yellow part of eggs. No evidence there, but anecdotal and observational. Dairy you can see, and all of them are saying do not eat processed meat. So I think that's a good little snapshot there for you to have a look at. And again, I'm just going to check in with the question. Okay, so Claire's asked a good question here. Is there good, bad flaxseed oil, supermarket versus pharmacy? It's a tricky one, isn't it, Claire? And generally in this space, you do get what you pay for. So there's some nice, two ones that come to my mind are Stony Creek and Melrose. They're both in either a tin or a black bottle, so there's no sunlight. They're both cold pressed, and they should be kept. You should be buying it from a place that's kept them cool, either in the fridge or on a cool shelf, but probably preferably in the fridge. So I think if you look for those things, that they're properly packaged and properly stored, that's a really good starting point. And Graham's asked if I know anything about pomegranate molasses compared to fresh, and I don't. Sorry, Graham, but I do recommend molasses, which is from a byproduct from the sugarcane industry that is so rich in magnesium and calcium and our essential minerals. It's very sweet, but it can be useful part of getting some fantastic minerals in you. So thank you for mentioning the word molasses, Graham. That prompted a good comment. So here's an overview of the Swank diet, OMS, Terry Walls, and I'm not going to go through them. You've got them in your handouts, and they're all got some restrictions in them. It's a very personal choice and really should be done with the supervision of a dietitian and or a GP to make sure it's the right thing by you. You need to think about what's appropriate for your family, if you have one, for your lifestyle, for your wallet, for your level of commitment, and what information resonates with you. As far as I'm currently aware, none of them have a solid, there's no evidence for any of the diets. There's observational information, but there's no solid evidence. Terry Walls is currently doing a larger study. She did a small study, and she's currently undergoing a larger cohort. Be interesting to see what comes out from that. I'd like to talk about some simple swaps that you can do in your diet. So to improve your nutrients, so what we're looking for is really beautifully nutrient dense food. So each time you eat, there's an opportunity to get great nutrition in, and certainly that's what a lot of the MS diets are doing, are really bumping up the amount of nutrition you're popping in your body. So maybe considering changing white rice to wild or whole grain or brown rice would be a great start. Getting rid of the white bread that really does not have any nutrient in it, and getting some whole grain or wholemeal bread instead of having margarine, which is often produced at high temperatures. Considering using avocado or flaxseed oil as a spread on your toast, etc. And as we've talked about, taking processed meat out of your diet and replacing it with legumes or great quality grass-fed meat or fish or tofu, for example. And sugary drinks, getting rid of sugary drinks and having a beautiful green tea, which is strongly anti-inflammatory, having good quality fresh water, having a smoothie, for example. I love this picture of our sugar. And I just want to touch base if anybody's got any tips on how they get sugar out of their diet. I struggle with it. I find that once it creeps back into my diet, I have to use a bit of willpower for 2 weeks, and then once I've cut it down for 2 weeks, that helps. I also find that once I'm on a bit of a sugar hit, if I can change it and eat something savory, that can help to stop that process of craving. The healthier I am, the less I want it, the healthier my gut is, and we'll talk about gut microbiome. The healthier my gut is, the less I crave sugar. And also, I find by just making sure in my house, doing a good pantry sort out and not having chocolate biscuits and chocolate and sweet things easily accessible, that has significantly helped me. If I've got to go to the shop to get my sugar, then I'm not going to go. And also making sure you're well hydrated. Sometimes when we're thirsty, it can manifest as a sugar low. So I'm just going to check in with questions again now. Okay, so Graham's saying, he's a diabetic, so he has to have good eating habits, and he has a blood glucose level meter, which keeps him on track. And Joanne's saying that she looks at sugar as if it's poisonous and it makes her feel bad, and in that way she manages it. I think and Bridie's saying she's been having probiotics most days because of research about MS and the gut microbiome, and we'll get to that, Bridie, and I think that sounds fantastic and a great move. I also think it's worth noting that a lot of, when we're using willpower, sheer willpower to get our diet on track, that can be really, really hard because we only have a certain amount of willpower, and some of us have more than others. So I really like to encourage you to approach your lifestyle changes coming from very much a compassionate self-care place. So if you're looking at it from like you would if you're caring for your child, you want to feed them well and look after them well and give them the best possible foods from a kind, compassionate point of view. I find that easier to be compliant with that attitude than trying to muscle my way through my better diet. I also find, for me, having a really solid, good, healthy basis for my diet and allowing treats for weddings, parties, birthdays, etc. Having that degree of flex helps as well. But it's very personal, and we all find and navigate our way through it. So my tips for success is adopt a great attitude, and I would say, one of really wanting to feed yourself well, coming from a basis of self-care, getting educated about what's currently recommended, knowing yourself, how much do you want to put in, what might work for you, thinking about food in a collaborative way and all the things you can eat and what you love. And definitely, I would put this as number one: spring clean your pantry. Get all the stuff out of your pantry that you don't want to eat and don't buy it. This one I call idiot proofing, and that relates to me, not anybody else. But I keep healthy snacks in the drawer of my desk, in my car, and to hand in the house. So my go-to healthy snacks would be rice crackers with some avocado on them, some miso soup, although that's a little bit salty, obviously fresh fruits, bananas, mandarins, etc. Acknowledging your achievements, like when things have gone well, noticing what went well and how it went well, planning, and again, that pantry power. If it's not in the house, then chances are you won't eat it. Let's talk about vitamin D. So I'm sure you're all across vitamin D, and your neurologists are all across vitamin D. But we know that the link between vitamin D and MS is strengthened by that association between sunlight and the risk of MS. So the further away from the equator a person lives, the higher the risk of MS. So we refer to MS as a disease of latitude. So for example, Tasmania's got a higher incidence of MS than Queensland, and Tasmania's further away from the equator. So there's an association with sunlight and MS, and we think perhaps vitamin D is the part of sunlight. So when sunlight is on our skin, our body produces vitamin D. However, I just want to stress that when we've done studies comparing sunlight and MS and vitamin D only and MS, sunlight is better for you. Now that's a risky recommendation in Australia, isn't it? Because too much sun can be harmful. So a general recommendation would be for 15 minutes of sun on as much as your body as possible, 3 to 5 times a week at a standard UV index 7 day. That's quite a lot of information, isn't it? So get as much of your body exposed as you can. Hopefully, if your neighbours can't overlook where you live. So get as nude as you can. Get some good UV7, so not on a high UV day, but get some good UV7 on your skin, as much as your skin as you can for 15 minutes. Okay, so your skin makes about 10,000 IU of vitamin D after 30 minutes of full body sun exposure. So that's quite a lot, and that's very general. We suggest that you have no more than 15 minutes. That's the general recommendation. So your body actually can't make more vitamin D the longer it's exposed, and then it just simply becomes dangerous and you raise your risk of other issues, particularly skin cancer. And if you expose a small area for longer, that doesn't work, because once all the vitamin D in a given area of skin is made, so that's within about 15 minutes or so, no more is made for about another day. Okay, so the more skin you can expose for about 15 minutes, the more vitamin D you'll make. And that sunlight exposure seems to be better for you than straight vitamin D. Now, vitamin D levels are checked by a simple blood test, and your neurologist will keep an eye on your levels and supplement you if you need it. And again, that big caution around sunlight and skin cancer, and being very careful that you don't burn and that you're only out in the UV 7 times and for a limited amount of time. Okay, I know I don't need to tell you that, but I just feel like I need to gently remind you. Okay, so there's been a variety and some long ongoing studies on vitamin D. It is stored in your fat in your body, so there's like a battery storage of vitamin D. And vitamin D helps to regulate your immune function and protect brain function and regulate levels of minerals. And it also seems to act a bit like a hormone in the body. Lots of studies with vitamin D, but not all by any means. There's been some contradictory studies, but a significant amount of studies have shown that a higher level of blood serum vitamin D correlates with a slower progression of MS and fewer new lesions in people with early symptoms of MS. And in a large group of nurses, it was found that the risk of developing MS appeared to be less for women taking a vitamin D supplement. Okay, so that's why your neurologist will be right across your vitamin D levels. Just going to check in, sorry, and you can get a vitamin D tracker, which can be useful to pop on your phone. And I'm just going to check in with any questions. And Bridie is saying, is that 15 or 50 minutes? And it's definitely 15, Bridie, okay? Andrew's asking, is chocolate essential? And how about dark chocolate? And what about wine? Andrew, I can see a lot of people will be nodding and grinning hearing your comments. Of course, chocolate's essential. We can't live without it. Dark chocolate has some great phytochemicals in it, which are strongly antioxidant. So they say about 20 grams or a couple of squares a day of over 70% cacao is helpful. White chocolate is obviously full of sugar and dairy, and I don't think we could consider that healthy for us at all. And wine, that's always contentious, isn't it? Red wine has got resveratrol in it, and that it has got some lovely anti-inflammatory properties. So drinking some good quality red wine in moderation could be considered okay. But the health messages around wine are often very mixed. And obviously, if you're pregnant, and Andrew, I'm assuming you're not, but if you're pregnant, there is no healthy amount of alcohol that you can drink. Okay. So when we're thinking about supplements, I would love you to consider flaxseed oil for all the lovely reasons I've mentioned. And let's think about supplementing with B vitamins. So first of all, I'm not a fan of supplementing overall. It's great if we can get what we need from whole foods, much better for us. However, sometimes it's hard to be compliant. Sometimes we have a chronic health condition that could do with a bit extra. And so I mention supplements with a great caution, but these are the ones that I think are worth considering. A good multi-B is worth considering because it's great for energy production and a healthy myelin sheath and the nervous system. We usually take Bs as a whole group. B12 and folate seem to be most important because they're required for central nervous system function and DNA synthesis. And B12 is required to convert homocysteine, which is an amino acid, to methionine, which is another amino acid. And homocysteine, we know, is neurotoxic. So we need to have adequate amounts of B12. If you're vegetarian or vegan, you probably don't have adequate amounts of B12 and you probably need to supplement or get an injection for that. Okay, we know that a deficiency of vitamin B12 can cause symptoms similar to MS. We don't believe that B12 deficiency contributes to MS in any way, but it may be useful to supplement with a good multi-B. They're water soluble, so they're not stored in the body, unlike vitamin D, which is stored. So you need to be careful how much vitamin D you have, hence the regular blood test. But Bs are water soluble, so you're just going to excrete them if you have too much, within reason. Okay, and B12 is also important for metabolism of fatty acids and the maintenance of myelin. So another good reason why we want B12. From a food source, it's in meat, eggs, poultry, yeast, and fish. It's in Marmite, but not Vegemite, which is not a lot of use to us here over in Australia where we eat Vegemite. Okay. And we've spoken briefly about the gut microbiome, and this is a really upcoming and important area of work in nutrition and in health generally. So our gut is almost like our second brain. It's actually producing a lot of our neurotransmitters. We believe that up to 90% of serotonin is produced in our gut, along with dopamine and GABA, etc. So it's becoming a new frontier in medicine, but we know then that our moods and brain is strongly associated with the health of our gut and all the bacteria and what we call the microbiome in it. So our gut is doing so much more than just digesting food. There's evidence that shows that a stable gut microbiota, so that's the microbes living in our gut, is required for a properly functioning immune system. Changes in our microbiome have been shown to disturb a very careful regulation between T cells, and if we get that balance wrong, it can cause inflammation and an increased risk of autoimmune diseases. So how do you get your gut in balance? Well, I encourage you to listen to the webinar delivered by Dr. Wolfgang Marx from the Food and Mood area at Deakin University in Melbourne. And I think there's a podcast as well, so you can get a lot of extra information here. But we really want to get our microbiome in as good a shape as possible, because there's been some good information about probiotics, perhaps improving the health of people with MS by reducing disability and reducing inflammation. There's been a good study there published in the Clinical Nutrition. and it seems that a probiotic that's had the bacteria in it called Lactobacillus acidophilus, which you also find in yogurt, Lactobacillus casei, Bifidobacterium bifidum, Lactobacillus fermentum. So it's very specific strains of probiotics, has been shown to help with disability scores and patients' health parameters. Okay, so at the moment, I would definitely recommend that you keep your gut bacteria as healthy as possible, maybe with a probiotic, but you can also consume foods that are really good in probiotics. Things such as sauerkraut, kimchi, natural yogurt, sourdough bread, for example, can all help with your probiotic. But probably one of the single most important things you can do is to cut the sugar out. If you cut sugar out, then you're not feeding the bad bacteria, and it's going to make a significantly beneficial effect on your gut. Also, if you're eating plenty of fiber, that helps to improve your gut health and will help with your microbiome as well. Okay, so Andrew's also asked, how do dried fruits rate? And I'm not a big fan of dried fruits, Andrew, because they're a really concentrated source of sugar. And as I've just mentioned with our gut microbiome, we are trying to reduce the amount of sugar that we have. So I would say eat whole, fresh fruit, and I wouldn't be having much in the way of dried fruits. Too easy to eat too much sugar. CoQ10 is also a supplement you might consider. There's been some studies on it that look interesting. It's an antioxidant, and it has been shown that it may help with energy, fatigue, and depression. So CoQ10 is in the mitochondria and helps with the energy production. Ursolic acid is an interesting area as well at the moment, because ursolic acid may slow the damage and help neuronal repair. And this was published in the Science Daily. You can see the study reference there. So apple with its skin on, it's also found in basil, cranberry, peppermint, thyme, rosemary, oregano, and prunes. So I would encourage you to eat an apple a day if that suits you. If you're not fructose intolerant, eat an apple a day with the skin on, and that could be beneficial for you. Let's have a very quick word, and I'm just doing a time check. Yep, we've got time. Let's have a very quick word about fasting and ketogenic diets. This is another fabulously interesting area. So there's some evidence that occasional fasting is good for the brain. In general, periods of fasting have been shown to increase brain cell activity and to promote growth. So we're really interested in that, and to also encourage repair of neurons in the brain. So fasting is generally considered having around 16 hours without food. So for example, say from 7 o'clock at night until 11 o'clock in the morning, periodically, not doing that perhaps all the time, but just doing that periodically. And so when we fast, the body has to metabolize fat from fat cells as a source of energy instead of our more traditional way of metabolizing energy, which is more from carbohydrates. And then we produce ketones, so hence the name ketogenic diet. So intermittent fasting can be beneficial. However, big caveat there, it's not for everyone. If you're underweight, if you're diabetic, if you're pregnant, absolutely this is not for you. So again, you need to get some advice to find out if this might be appropriate for you. Beautiful contentious area is gluten-free. So there's been a lifestyle guide produced recently by MSRA, and it looks at some studies here regarding gluten-free. So a very small study of a gluten-free diet showed that there was less lesions, better disability outcomes. So some people might consider going gluten-free, but the study was very small, so the evidence was very limited at this point in time. We do know that from a genetic profile point of view, celiac is very closely genetically related to MS. So I often find when I speak with people, somebody else in their family has got gluten issues, such as celiac disease, where you cannot eat gluten at all. So gluten's in wheat, rye, barley, oats, and some people find it helps, and some people find it doesn't make any difference to them whatsoever. And the study was very small. Dairy free. I know some of you popped in right at the beginning of the session that you were going dairy free. So a small study has shown a link with dairy and prevalence, so the amount of MS, but there's no evidence around dairy with disease progression. So if you already have MS, there's no evidence to remove dairy from your diet. I would add a caveat here, though, that half the population is lactose intolerant, and large parts of the world only give dairy to their young children, and adults don't drink dairy. People think they have to have dairy in their diet for calcium and healthy bones. You don't, but you do need a healthy diet to have healthy bones, and you do need weight-bearing exercise to have healthy bones. And you can get great sources of calcium and magnesium and manganese and boron and all the wonderful minerals that you need for healthy bones from things like tahini, which is crushed sesame seeds, from those wonderful almonds and Brazil nuts, and from not having sugar in your diet, which leaches minerals out of your bones, or can do. So having dairy is a personal choice. For me personally, I don't have dairy in my diet, and I enjoy, soy and almond and rice milk, etc. And I have tahini and nuts, and mackerel, and some fish with small bones in them as well, that help to provide some great healthy bone minerals. So in summary, guys, make sure you've got adequate vitamin D levels via a blood test, and then sunlight and supplements as needed. Enjoy a gorgeous, tasty, delicious anti-inflammatory diet with rainbow colours of vegetables on half your plate each meal, and fruit and fish. Get plenty of omega-3s from flaxseed oil and walnuts and oily fish. And improve your gut microbiome by eating fermented foods and limiting your sugar and using antibiotics sparingly. So they would be my take-home messages for you. I want to acknowledge some of the great work that the researchers are doing in this research space, and also the recently released MSRA modifiable lifestyle factors that you can go to the website msra.org.au and download a copy. You can also go to our website and look at our Eat Well, Live Well. And I'd love to pause for a moment and just ask you all to maybe think about, with all the things you've heard today, if there's anything in there that you're thinking about maybe changing, or you're feeling more committed to keep that change in your diet. So maybe just drop in the question box something that you're feeling that you want to make sure you either remove from your diet, or you keep in your diet, or you add to your diet, or you look into further. That would be great if you could share that. So I'm just going to quickly check our questions as you type that in. That would be wonderful. Okay, so Gina's saying, what time of day would UV7 be? And that would vary each day and season and on your location, Gina. So you'd have to look that up in a local guide. Bride is saying broccoli is easier to eat than kale, and I think that's probably a very personal choice, Bridie. So nutritional yeast is a good source of B12, and yes, it is. And Ian's asking, what's your opinion of apple cider vinegar? It's lovely and alkalizing, and I think apple cider vinegar can be a useful addition in our diet. Just having a little bit of apple cider vinegar in some warm water in the morning would be great. Anne's asking, are prunes okay? Prunes are great. They're a fantastic way of keeping our gut regular, of helping with constipation, and just don't have too much of them, or it can make your gut a bit gripey. And they've also got that ursolic acid in them, which is showing to be a really useful nutritional tool. Is bread binding? So is bread constipating? I'm not sure, Marianne. I think if you eat bread and you don't have enough water, it could be. But if you're eating bread that's full of wholemeal and fibre, then that's going to help with constipation and gut health. It's going to bulk out the stool, but you just need to make sure you're drinking enough water. Oh, so Claire's saying that she's committing to starting OMS after Christmas. That's fantastic, Claire, and we wish you every success with that, and just make sure that you're getting all the nutrients you need. Ernestina's looking into B12 and probiotics. Fantastic. Graham saying it's difficult trying to lose weight with diabetes, etc. And yes, I think all of us can understand how it can be hard with weight management. Helen's going to remove processed meats. Yay! Fantastic, Helen, that's great. Gina's going to get some flaxseed oil. Anne's adding flaxseed and walnuts. Marian's put something in the ointment. I can't think what it is, but she's saying her weakness is chocolate covered almonds. But maybe if you could get dark chocolate covered almonds, that could be considered a healthy snack in moderation, Marian. So shop around for some really good quality dark chocolate on your almonds. Sue's going for flaxseed oil, which is great. Stella's already taken processed meat out of her diet, so that's great. Wonderful, that's all our tips. So I just would like to finish. Thank you so much, guys, for being so interactive. It really helps. It makes me feel like I'm not just talking to my computer, but that there's a live audience out there listening. So that I really appreciate that, and great comments and some great commitment to make some changes to your diet, which I'm really excited about for you. So just want to finish off very briefly with some housekeeping. The gateway to all of our services, as I know many of you know, is MS Connect 1-800-042-138 and the email address there. Lots of good reasons to call MS Connect. You can speak to a nurse advisor, a social worker, an MS expert, and then lots of other good reasons here. And of course, it's how you access all of our other services. We've got a wonderful peer support team, so if you feel like you want to reach out and talk to somebody in a similar situation to yourself with MS, especially over the Christmas period, please get in touch. There's also telegroups and face-to-face groups, support groups, Facebook groups, so lots of ways you can connect. We've got a symptom management tool called Get Your Act Together that you can find on our website. We've got a wonderful team of employment support services helping you to stay in your current job or find new employment. Again, MS Connect number is the access for our employment support services. We are an NDIS supporter provider, and we provide different services in different locations. A note about My Age Care, that it's for people over 65 and how you can access it and contact details are on this slide here. We've got some fantastic podcasts, including nutrition and nutritional research, lots of great topics, and a new series of Inspiring Lives for you to listen to with people who've got MS and what they're doing and what approaches they're taking as some inspiration for you. Thanks again, guys. Wishing you a great holiday time. I hope it's relaxing and restful for you all. Thank you for your support over the year, and I hope you've found some really good information from us, and please don't hesitate to be in touch if you need anything from us. So thanks again, guys, and all the best. Let's hope 2021 is a little bit easier than 2020. Bye for now.